All right. I can tell there's still a few people still outside, but I think people are starting to file on in. Well, that was amazing and inspirational, right? Thank you all for sticking around for our next workshop. I just feel like this is such a natural step after our conversation with Judge McEwen and Natalia Duncan-Macker on how we can move into leading and just being in our lives with more integrity. So I'm very delighted to introduce Daniela Peterson and Jamil Higley to talk about having difficult conversations and how that requires internal activism and authentic power. They're going to introduce themselves to you, so I'd like to bring you both to the stage.
Thank you so much. Hearing Judge McEwen share her story, her journey, and her work, I was reminded why it's important to be able to have difficult conversations. Because if we can avoid the entire judicial system and not have to take a hard conversation to court, I think that that would be an amazing thing. And so part of our hope today is to give you the skills necessary to have hard conversations. And I think this is as much for us initially, and then sharing with you this amazing quote we found by Elizabeth Lesser. Let's put aside the goal of doing it perfectly and replace it with the trust that we can do it differently. And with that, I'm going to take a deep breath, and I invite you all to do that as well. And that in our lives and as women and as human beings, we're really called not to be perfect, but to live into our differences and to appreciate our differences. And when it comes to having difficult conversations together today, let's set the goal of doing it differently. And initially, the conversation and the title was just going to be about how to have difficult conversations, but we wanted to give you more than what you just find when you do a Google search.
Yeah, well, thank you, everyone. I don't know if you can hear me well. Okay, so so what you can see this, well, there's some truth and value to what you see here, this PowerPoint, right? Saying what you need to do to have difficult conversations. So listen, reflect, respond, and grow. We, Jamil and I, wanted to go more in depth. So because this doesn't get to the core work that must to be done in order for us to create some long-lasting changes. And this is why we decided to spend the time in this workshop working more in depth to find our inner power and authentic power and inner activism.
So what exactly do we mean by authentic power and inner activism? So our desire today is really encapsulated in the work of Elizabeth Lesser and this specific quote, which I tweaked just a little bit for our needs, but sharing this idea. And I don't like reading PowerPoints, but I really want to bring home this point. Authentic power and internal activism is where we will find the courage to believe in ourselves and to stand for what we know is possible, especially when it comes to situations where we meet resistance, be it at work or at home, in our communities, those places that we are having difficult conversations. And out of that, new stories and more authentic values are inside of us, and the depth of who we really are beneath the usual brain chatter, under the conditioning or the confusion or the fear that holds us back. So that's the work that we're going to do today, finding our authentic power and activating internal activism.
Yes. So this is the therapeutic equivalent of speed dating, but we're going to date ourselves, right? So what we want to do to see what we have in common today, see if there is a spark, and let's see what amazing comes out of this workshop. We really want you to work on yourself. There's no right or wrong. Just live the moment, live the process, and take as much as you can from this workshop. Take it home and just try to implement it every day in your life.
But instead of looking for that spark in someone else, we're going to look for that spark inside of ourselves and your capacity to lead. And when your actions, this is what I was going to say next. I started to read the quote without telling you what it was. I was preparing for a presentation with a group of women, and I had this quote I wanted to lead with, but I checked my source. And initially, I thought the quote belonged to John Quincy Adams, but it was actually a Dolly Parton quote. So talking Again, he got the credit, right? But it was really her. And so in this idea of inner wisdom and your capacity to lead, I want to begin with this quote. Your capacity to lead is really influenced and becomes viable when your actions inspire others, okay? To dream more, to learn more, to do more, and to become more. And that's when you're a leader. So I think that was just so simple. Like, I am a leadership development coach, but I even struggled with owning that title until I found this quote. And I feel like we all have this opportunity to inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, no matter how we serve in our lives, whether we're working at a convenience store, if we're in front of a classroom, or we're sitting in front of a court.
Okay, and this is why you are invited to do the courageous work. And also, it's really important. Did you read that already? Sorry.
Okay, so here's just an aside to share with you too. So I will go in depth more about what I do, but as a coach, my job is to ask questions. So out of that, I wanted to pose the question of what becomes possible when we reframe potentially confrontational conversations and instead view them as transformational conversations. So thank you, Daniela.
Mm-hmm. So let's try to, we are inviting you to do the courageous work of looking inward, right? Speaking up and making the change that need to be done in order for you to have transformational conversations in your life, right? So we want you to be able, at the end of this workshop, to connect with that inner power, authentic power in your inner activism. Everyone has that. You just need to find it. And we are going to help you to do that.
So, introductions. So I could just go with the standard introduction. So my name is Jamil Higley, and I am a student success and leadership development coach, specializing in emotional intelligence. But when I share that with you, along with the fact that I'm the mother of 4, and I'm happy that 3 of my kiddos are here, and my husband as well. We've been in Jackson for 3 years, have been a part of this community for close to 20. Went to Barnard College, studied cultural anthropology. I mean, there's importance and value in those things, but you really don't get a sense of who I am, right?
Yes, and I'll do the same. My name is Daniela Peterson. I'm from Chile. I don't know if you can tell I have a little bit of an accent. So, and I have been here in Jackson for 17 years, 17 years of marriage, 2 beautiful kids, Nico and Sophia, that are with me today. And I'm a counselor and the founder of Vista Counseling. That's all I can say. That's my basic introduction. Then you're going to know much more about me.
So again, you're gonna see some themes here, putting aside the goal of doing things perfectly. So we're going to do introductions differently. So again, going into my coaching toolkit, I have a question for Daniela. Again, not perfectly.
But we try, right? There's nothing wrong with making mistakes.
Yeah, you can hear her better now, which is good. So again, talking about how we could do our introductions differently, because we wanted to, again, stir the pot. And so I thought I would pull out some of my coaching tools, which again, go back to asking questions, and put Daniela on the spot. So as a coach, it's my job to ask questions, to lead with curiosity, to not have assumptions, to be an active listener, to read body language, and to hear what's being said as much as what's not being said. So with that in mind, I'm putting you on the spot. What are you feeling in this exact moment?
Whoa, a lot, as you can tell, right? So first of all, I'm just thinking about the audience. It is because we are here because we want to serve you and provide something for you. So I am hoping that I can convey my ideas, that you can take something from today, that you can take some information that you can implement on your daily life, right? That you can learn that you have the power to make changes when they need to be changed, and not to be afraid to have difficult conversations. I mean, they're scary, they're not fun, but they're very much needed to have some changes in a different outcome. So that's what I'm waiting, that's my hope for today.
Yeah. So in your sharing, I'm getting a better sense of what you're wanting to accomplish, right? So, but there's also the doing side of life, and there's the being side of life. So if we were to peel back another layer and I was to ask, what else? What else are you feeling in this moment?
Do you want me to be honest or just?
Well, we're totally not about staying surface, right?
Yeah. So, okay, I have these thoughts that are coming to my mind. So I want to make sure that you're able to understand all my ideas, right? Because what I was telling Jamil, I have all these beautiful ideas in my mind, but then I struggle when I need to put them into English, right? When I need to communicate with others. I want to make sure that they get exactly what I'm trying to say. So that's kind of one of my thoughts that I have. Secondly, I do know what I know. It's not, I'm not a genius, of course. There's not such a thing of perfection. But I have been working as a therapist for over 13 years, and I do use communication skills every single day in my work and with my family and all of my people in my community. So that side of me says just stay confident, right?
Yeah. So what we're hearing, and probably everyone picked up on, is something that we're familiar with, that internal dialogue, right? So there's some positive, but then there's also some fear, some negativity that plays a part when we are preparing for something like this or preparing to have a difficult conversation with someone. And so I heard both, right? I heard the go for it piece, and I heard the part of you perhaps that was afraid that this wasn't possible. So tell me a little bit more about those two parts of yourself.
Okay, well, as I just said, I have these negative thoughts that come to me that say, no, you can't do it, you're gonna forget everything, you're gonna make a mistake. But those thoughts somehow help me because I came super prepared just in case this didn't work, right? But on the other side, I'm thinking, yes, you are able to do it, you can do it. What if you make a mistake? It's okay. So what Jamil is trying to identify here is my inner saboteur and my inner advocate. We all have that. Just take a moment. Think about how many times you had these negative thoughts going to your mind, and telling you things that you're not capable, you can't do it. On the other hand, it's like, yes, you can do it. You have done it before. It's not your first time. Or if you make a mistake, so what? Right? What's the worst thing that can happen? So in this image, I chose this because I feel like my inner saboteur is the lion, right? Oh my gosh, I see the lion, everyone who can speak better English than me, everyone that has been in the US longer than me, or someone that has been in the profession for like 40 years plus. All those fears come and say, but why you? On the other side, you can see the smiles, feeling more confident, yeah, I'm little, so what? Just tell me, and I'll do it, right? So that part of myself that makes me feel confident and take the risk. There's nothing wrong with taking the risk. The only way I'm gonna know what is on the other side of this stage is if I go and stand up over there, and that's okay.
And I just so appreciate this visual. So I think that when we're doing that work of exploring our inner advocate and our inner saboteur, the fact that this lion seems so big and so intimidating, but yet the resourcefulness, the resilience, the problem-solving skills that exist within this mouse really overcome what's challenging in the moment and in the big picture as well.
Well, enough about me. I think that you're just asking me questions. I would like to know a little bit about you, Jamil.
Yeah.
And tell me, do you have any inner saboteur or inner advocate?
I definitely do. My middle daughter, Grace, just auditioned for a part in the play Matilda. And when she was working on her monologue and I saw this script, I was like, oh, even though it had a British accent, I could hear it. It was me. It was how I speak to myself in my lowest moments. Like, how dare you? How dare you take a risk? I'll crush you, pound you, dissect you. I mean, yuck, right? Who wants to hear that type of criticism? And I think we know that as the inner saboteur, when we can say, I would never talk to someone else that way. That's one way that you can identify your inner saboteur when it rears its ugly head. And another way that you can identify your inner saboteur is because it, she, he will take a grain of truth and blow it up so that it becomes a barrier to further explanation, a barrier to risk, a barrier to breaking through and doing something really extraordinary. But I also know that our inner saboteur isn't all bad. Right? Our inner saboteur originally played the role to keep us safe, but we come to a place in our lives where we realize this is no longer serving me. So thankfully, I also have an inner advocate.
Like the inner saboteur that was telling us, you might forget about this, right?
Yeah, exactly. So hello, Lizzo. Lizzo joins me on my weekly runs, and she is incredible. In particular, this song, Soulmate, and the lyrics, which are up on the screen, really speak to me. I want to say that my children encouraged me to DM Lizzo to see if she would join us, that we could do our ending differently. That didn't happen, but as a spoiler alert, Lizzo will be joining us at the end of our presentation. But Lizzo, you know, when I was preparing for this, I actually blasted this music as I drove to the Center for the Arts, but really just affirming my value. You know, reminding me that I have what it takes and I have what I need, and that it's almost a requirement that I share what I've learned with other people, and I feel like she empowers me to do that when Mrs. Trunchbull tries to step in. So the reason we're having you all hear our inner saboteur and our inner advocate is because it is a way to kind of break through and not just have introductions that remain surface with your name and your title and where you went to school and what your job is, right? And so we want to challenge you all to do something similar today.
Okay. So before you do the exercise, I would like to say, so we identified that the inner saboteur that Jamil has is embodied by Mrs. Trunchbull, right? Very negative, very scary, very diminishing. And her inner advocate is represented or embodied by Lizzo. By the way, I'm so into Lizzo right now because she's been talking about Lizzo all the time since we've been meeting, and she has a point. I mean, she's really a powerful woman. But yes, it is important to name things and assign a name, and then we can talk about the feelings, how important it is to, whenever you're experiencing a feeling, name the feeling, because if you name it, you have more chances to understand where's the feeling coming from, what created it. So, but we'll talk about it later.
Yeah. So here's this idea. You name it in order to tame it. So naming that inner saboteur means that they're not in the driver's seat. So I'm big on metaphors if you haven't picked that up already. And I think about if I'm going on a road trip, who do I want to be holding the map or the steering wheel? Definitely not my inner saboteur. I want Lizzo to have her hand on the stereo, and she can even manage my GPS for me, right? I feel like she's going to get me where I need to go. So this exercise, Name It to Tame It, is an extension of how we want you all to introduce yourselves to each other. So you might already know the name of the person to your right or to your left, but I bet you don't know the name of their inner saboteur or their inner advocate. So just take a moment. There is a piece of paper inside of your notebook, and if you'll take a moment to just get real, get a little bit vulnerable, you can give a name like Lizzo or Mrs. Trunchbull, or you could share the physical manifestation, so a lion or a shark or however it is that you imagine that part. And then you're going to introduce yourself to the person to your right and to your left and share a little bit more about who you are. So enjoy for the next minute or so. And for those people that are joining us virtually, I would say this is more of an opportunity for self-reflection.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. I see some laughter. You're having fun, huh?
maybe take another 10 or 15 seconds to wrap up your sharing. All right, everybody. I love the energy of the room right now, right? So there's already something that feels more authentic with this degree of like curiosity and vulnerability and sharing and digging in. So thank you all for joining us in that little exercise that is kind of putting your toe in the water of internal activism and authentic power. So, and I also just want to invite you guys to maybe start introducing yourself in a different way and going beyond the, niceties of first name, last name, and profession.
Right? Okay. Can you hear me well? I feel like I have to be like that. No? So you can hear me well? No? Yes? Okay, thank you. All right, well, that was fun. I really enjoyed seeing all the, hearing the laughter, seeing people really connecting, and that's part of our workshop. We want you to have fun and enjoy the process, okay? Always remember that. It's not about the outcome all the time. It's about the process of doing it. And we forget that. We are always so oriented about the outcome, but we don't think how it's going to be for us while we are getting there, right? So this is what I want you to start thinking about and implement it. All right, so I'm going to talk about authentic power. What is authentic power? So I'm going to go and just read word by word about this definition that we found. Authentic power is the absence of pretense and performance, which gives your action greater power because they emanate from your core values. Remember that, core values, and core strength, something solid, genuine, and real. Adapted from Susan David. We really love this. I mean, Jamil and I had spent so many hours just talking about these ideas and how can we better explain them. But I think this represents it really well. So now, I am going to talk a little bit about myself. I'm going to dive into my inner power, authentic power, inner activist. So I'm from Chile. I was born and raised in Chile, and this is my family. Chile is 5,882 miles from Jackson Hole. So many things happen over there, right? And so many things happened before I was able to be on a stage with this beautiful audience. My dad was an amazing man. He was loving, caring. He was always reading every book he could find. My dad was the man who loved philosophy, psychology. He knew about everything. He was like a walking encyclopedia. He was just like, Dad, you didn't know this? And he knew everything. He was also an artist. He loved painting, writing poems. He loved all that. He loved listening classical music, which I got that from here. I don't know if you're familiar with Yo-Yo Ma. Oh my gosh, he was listening to Yo-Yo Ma all the time, right? So he was an amazing man. But he had some issues, and we are going to get there. My mom, on the other side, I grew up at a working class family. We didn't have a lot. Sometimes we didn't have enough, but this got worse over the years when I was growing up. My mom was a very hardworking woman, but she was staying home, making sure that my siblings and I had all of our needs met. Very nurturing, very loving, always solving problems, always making sure my dad was fine, everyone's fine, that she'll forget sometimes about her own needs. She was always sewing and knitting, soothing herself by doing craft all the time. So why am I saying this? It sounds like a pretty normal family, right? But as I grew up, I started noticing some things in my family, especially my dad, and those things created chaos. He became an alcoholic. I don't know if you can resonate with that, if you know someone that went through that. There is so much involved and affected by living on an alcoholic environment. So my dad became an alcoholic, and the result of that was the chaos, the anxiety, the crying, the arguments, the fear, the unknown, what to expect, what's going to happen next. He was an amazing man, but he had the disease. So my whole family was just kind of like trying to figure things out, everyone like acting out in different ways. And somehow, as the older child, because we are 4 siblings, I'm the oldest, and I had to take the role of the person that was saying, wait a minute, everybody stop. We need to do something. Let's talk about this. And I believe I was about 15, 16 or something like that, or maybe a little bit more, when I realized that my dad was an alcoholic. Everyone knew that he was drinking once in a while, on and off, but no one was able to identify that it was not just the drinking, it was just the whole behavior. And this was affecting us in our family dynamic. So talking about difficult conversations, I had to do that. And I took that role at a very young age. So I was making sure that my mom stopped crying all the time, that my mom takes care of herself, that my dad goes to rehab, that my siblings are safe, that I was safe, that we had enough things at home, that we can continue functioning within the dysfunction in my family. Now, why am I talking about this? Because of everything that happened in my family, I decided, I grew up and I made the choices. What about what happened in my life experience I was going to keep with me? What I kept with me? The love for classical music. Being a nurturing parent, I'm a nurturing mom. Making sure that my kids are always safe. I kept the love for the arts overall. I love like painting. In fact, my husband, he's an artist. I love that, right? And I want to make sure that I kept the good, beautiful things that my family gave me, because we always have something good and something not so good. We cannot be just biased and say everything was bad, because that's not true. But what I decided not to keep was to become an alcoholic, not to marry one. I decided not to be the woman hiding her tears, trying to solve the problems on her own and not meeting her needs. And I decided to provide as much as I can for my children, making sure that they feel safe every single day and never thinking about, oh, I don't know what's going to happen next. They know what to expect. And I worked really, really hard to provide that, because I went through the opposite and I don't want them to go through that. So I made choices. One of my many life lessons, of course, having difficult conversations all the time. I was the one, the child. It was just kind of crazy, because you think that mom and dad are here and the kids are here and they're supposed to make all the decisions. I was making decisions for my parents. I was making decisions for my siblings. I was making decisions for my family. So I was the one that was saying, like literally, I did this. Dad, have a seat. Mom, have a seat. Kids, you come here. I'm sending my dad to rehab. We are doing this. We are no longer going to be fighting all the time. We need to communicate, because this is a family disease. We need to deal with this, all of us. And I was listened by my dad and my mom. So, okay, enough about me. Now, it is in our human nature to always have this feeling and the sense of belonging, to feel like I'm part of a group of people, that I'm loved, that I'm important to someone else, that I feel like I can have friends, that I can have my family that I can go to, feel like I'm needed, that I do exist and validated. We are always looking for that, right? But I love this image. By the way, my daughter, she always reminds me of her name, Rosie Riveter, something like that. Yeah, I always forget the last name. But I feel like this image represents so well, and I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about all of us. Whenever we need to be in charge of something, we grab the strength coming from out of nowhere and we do it. Oh, I can hear myself better like now. I'm just gonna stay like that. But in order to have healthy relationships, we need to do some work, internal work first. I cannot expect to be able to deal with difficult conversations and difficult situations all the time if I don't even have a good relationship with myself. Most of the people think that that's the case. So, to have a good relationship with everyone else, or at least to be able to deal with difficult situations, I need to start working on my own, myself. And part of that work is self-knowledge. I know you all heard this at some point in your life. Self-knowledge and authentic power. I love this. So when we talk about self-knowledge, it's having the ability to know who you are, what you like, what you don't like, what scares you, what makes you feel safe and comfortable, what makes you feel happy, what makes you feel sad, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Getting to know yourself, your bright side and your dark side. We all have a little bit of everything, right? If you don't, raise your hand. Okay. So why is self-knowledge so important before I have a healthy relationship? Because getting to know myself, I'm better equipped to deal with someone's when they are disagreeing. Getting to know myself allows me to make wise choices. Being able to know myself, I'm allowing myself to get better control, take control over my own decisions, my own thoughts, my decisions, and my behaviors. Taking control over my own life. And stop blaming everyone else for the things that I had to go through. Taking ownership. Taking ownership means I know that I made a bad choice. Now, what can I do to improve this instead of blaming? It is very typical in the criminal thinking, talking about justice. Criminals, what do they do all the time? Oh, but he started it. She said that, but he pushed me. He did that. The police was this, and the judge was just so rude. Sorry, judge. But blaming everyone instead of saying, yes, I did it. What can I do to fix this? Right? So it is important. And there's something that I'm forgetting I really want to say, so I'm going to go through this. So, as I said, improves our chances of wiser choices. I said that. We are more in control. Being able to know yourself enables to be more proactive in response to external events. Knowing our triggers, knowing our patterns, knowing our behaviors allow us to be in control and to not let affect those feelings take over my decisions and my behaviors. Also, I can anticipate what is going to happen next, or if I'm dealing with someone that is very difficult, by knowing myself, I can anticipate. Well, I kind of know that this could happen, so I know that I can stay calm. I know that I'm right at this time. I know that I know what I know. So I'm going over there, presenting myself without fear of being manipulated by the situation and not knowing what to do. So I really love this. As a therapist, I use some CBT skills, cognitive behavior therapy skills, which are amazing. So you can see here, you see the situation, right? Situations and events always happen. So this is what happened. If I think about my life right now as growing up, the situation or the event is that my dad became an alcoholic and all the chaos and all the family dysfunction started because of his disease. So now when I think about that, I'm thinking, well, that was my life. There's nothing I can do to change that. I learned a lot of things. I love my dad. He passed away 5 years ago, and I love him, and I'm not resentful at all. He had a disease. So by thinking about, and my mom did as much as she could. That's my thought. My thought will affect the way I feel right now. Right now, I feel like peaceful. I feel like calm. I mean, it was sad, but you know, it's just what it is. It's life. I'm thankful that right now, the life that I chose is not like that. So now, when I'm thinking about my behavior, what I do now is to continue moving on with my life, teaching others. It's not a coincidence that I became a therapist, of course. And here's the funny thing. My practice name used to be La Familia Counseling. What is that telling you? I was counseling my own family for sure, right?
Now it's your broader family, this community here in Jackson.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Well, now it's Vista, because I can see from afar.
I love that.
So, okay. So the point for this is that I want you to understand that it depends on the lens that you use to see the situation. The interpretations of the event is up to you. You are in control. If you choose to think like negative, no, nobody wants me, my life was miserable, I'm such a victim of the circumstances, that's your choice. Your thought will determine how you feel. If you think negatively, you're going to feel like, crap, that's not a word, I just made it up. You're going to feel sad, angry, with resentment all the time. You're going to feel like defeated. There's nothing else you can do. And your behavior, you're probably going to be laying down in a bed, crying, and not doing anything else. You're in control of your thoughts and your choices. So now, real quick, I love this beautiful image that Jamil came up. She's the artist here with the images. I will put one and she'll change it, but I appreciate that because she's much better than me for that. So we all have these negative beliefs about ourselves, and we have this positive belief. Like the negative belief that I had maybe when I was growing up is like, I'm not good enough, I can't control my dad doesn't love me enough because he promised that he will quit drinking and he didn't, he lied to me. Those were my negative thoughts. Now I know that he was not lying. He just was very hopeless and helpless. He couldn't do it on his own. Now I get it, many years later. So those negative thoughts, you need to ask yourself, are those negative thoughts real? Are those objective? Who asked me to believe like that? Or I just came up with it? So filter, do the work. On the other side, we have this positive belief, and I want you to keep and embrace, either positive or negative. Embrace everything, but then you make the choices, which one you keep and which one you replace. These positive beliefs about myself made me be resilient. Because every time I talk to my friends, I say, do you want to see an example of resilience? Here, I feel that I'm resilient. I went through hell so many times. But I was holding on to those beautiful, good moments and the beautiful, healthy people that was around myself. So, okay. So part of the work, and I said before with both the letters, part of the self-knowledge work is values. And I'm going to read this, because I think it's a really good definition. They're freely chosen and have not been imposed on you. They're not goals. That is, they're ongoing rather than fixed. They guide you rather than constrain you. They are active, not static. They allow you to get closer to the way you want to live your life. My values were different when I was a child as they are right now. They bring you freedom from social comparisons. They foster self-acceptance, which is crucial to mental health. This is from Emotional Agility, Susan David. I just love this explanation about values. We all have values, but now, part of self-knowledge and get to know yourself and be prepared to deal with difficult conversations, you need to understand about your core values. Here's a small example of what are the core values can be. Commitments. For someone, passion is really important. Dependability, honesty, loyalty, efficiency, reliability, optimism, positivity. There's bazillion different core values, but those are changing over the time, and those are different in every person. So do never compare yourself with somebody else, because you're going to have a hard time doing that.
Daniela, I want to jump in and just this next exercise about suppressed values and asking what drives you crazy. So when we look back on your childhood and what was happening at home, and I know you're going to offer a further explanation about what suppressed values are, but when you were sharing your struggle with your dad, what was the most frustrating thing as a child who was put in that position of being the adult?
We didn't prepare this.
No, we didn't. This is totally
I'm really on the spot.
off the cuff.
Not being able to control what was happening to my dad in the family. Mm-hmm. Lack of control, that was driving me crazy, because I never knew what was going to happen next.
Yeah. So looking at suppressed values, and this is something I do with my clients, is we'll often say like, okay, what drives you mad? What drives you crazy? And then look at the inverse. So what's on the other side of the coin of control and feeling out of control for you? What's the flip side of that coin?
I think it's being able to predict, being in control of what's happening in my household. Not because I'm a control freak, no, but because I want to know that my kids are going to have food on the table on time. They know dad and mom are going to come home on time every day. They know they can come to us and we're going to be there for them. They know what to expect.
Yeah, so I hear stability and reliability are your core values. And I just did that quick exercise with her because I think it's too easy to go to a list and we can kind of always see things in the positive light and name, oh, well, compassion or generosity, and definitely those are true values that people can hold. But one way to kind of go a level deeper, right? We did the surface introductions and then a deeper introduction to look at your values and define your values, to do this exercise next, which Daniela is going to share with you. But I wanted to, again, put you on the spot.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we are going to do this activity, suppress values. So I want you to take a minute or so to think about something that drives you crazy. Like Jamil just asked me, like, what was driving you crazy from that time, right? Think about something that really drives you crazy. I want you to take your pen and just write it down.
Yeah, kind of those things that make like steam come out your ears, you go bright
Like,
red.
We're going to switch you. This is not working. Yes.
Oh, okay.
They're turning it off. Don't
Oh, okay. Did you hear me?
Okay.
Okay, so yes, think about something that drives you crazy. Think about it, write it down. When you're ready, just raise your hand.
Can you share maybe another example of a suppressed value?
Okay, one example would be, let's imagine that someone is just driving to go to work, okay? And then suddenly you get stuck on the traffic. Usually you have like 10 minutes, to get there, but it's been about 20, 25 minutes and you're not there yet. So this person feels really angry and upset because stuck on the traffic. So when I go and ask this person, like, okay, but what's the problem with this? I just hate to be late, and I just don't like this. I don't like to be stuck in the traffic. So now, when you finish writing that, I want you to do the work of flipping it over. And let's see what is the real value. So with this person, the example that I just gave you, the suppressed value was punctuality, respect for the other people that was waiting for him or her, right? That's the suppressed value. So do the work and then flip it over and see what comes out of that.
Should we ask them to then share that with their neighbor?
Yes. Talk to your neighbor and share your suppressed value.
You were going to ask something about that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I would love to hear, what did you find in there, huh?
I know.
And I would love if the people that is watching us on live stream can do the same exercise at home. All right. You can keep doing this at home. It's fun, isn't it? Yeah. Because sometimes you have no idea. Oh my gosh, I didn't know that I had that core value.
Yeah.
But you do have that.
And also, I think as a society, and actually Susan David had a post on LinkedIn today, and we've quoted her earlier, but she said, give yourself permission to feel anger, right? And what becomes possible. So I think as women a lot, we're conditioned to just come from a place of positivity, but even anger, frustration, looking at a suppressed value, that has information, it has value. And so instead of running away from those things, actually walking into them and doing that personal work.
Okay, well, talking about the core values, again, it is really important to get to know yourself before you are able to have a healthy relationship with anyone else. So start working with yourself, date yourself first before you want to date someone else. So something that I was almost forgetting. Part of self-knowledge also that has to do with authentic power, right, is to work on the acceptance. And it's not here because I forgot to put it on the PowerPoint or I deleted it. But acceptance, I'm going to be very brief because I don't want to take much time. But when you think about acceptance, and I think this is something that helped me, means being able to stop negotiating, stop the questioning. Like if I go back to my life and my history, I stop questioning, like, why me? Why me? Why my dad? Why my family? I'm not negotiating anymore. It's what it is. I take it. However, I'm accepting that. I'm embracing it because it's part of who I am. It doesn't mean that I want to repeat that because I'm accepting it. I'm not going to repeat it, but I'm not rejecting it anymore. When you are able to accept someone's point of view, beliefs, etc., you're going to feel much happier. However, you can implement your boundaries to go away from that. If it's hurting you, go away and set some distance. It is okay. Protect yourself.
And this image to me of I don't know if you guys can tell what it is, but it is an iceberg, but we flipped it upside down, right? Because the work that we're talking about is going deep. So what's underneath the surface? And I know that you also do EMDR. Tell me a little bit about that and how that gets you beneath the surface into what's so much bigger, right?
Okay, I don't know how many of you is familiarized with EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It's a technique, therapeutic technique that I use all the time because it's so helpful. So basically, if we see the iceberg upside down here, you see the bottom now, what you see is the symptoms, right? The person brings to my practice. So they come with the symptoms. But we are not just going to be talking over and over about the symptoms. They know what they feel. The thing is, like, now, let's get to the core so we can change these beliefs, the negative beliefs that make you feel the way you feel. So some information was not properly stored in your brain, right? So by doing the EMDR, we work with the negative beliefs and we replace it with the positive belief after doing the reprocessing, which is fascinating. So the way you perceive things, the way you look at that past experience is no longer hurting you, and it's not longer terrifying you. The way you see it's like, oh, okay, that happened. It doesn't mean that I love it, but at least now I can walk and I can move and I can live with that. So now I need to stop talking because it's Jamil's time. But what you see here, on the surface, you will see, this is upside down. Look at the bottom now. So difficult conversations become transformational conversations. I know we all want to avoid this, but you have to go and do it and face it. It is necessary to have a different outcome. Now, self-knowledge is what you need to work on. Acceptance is what it is. I embrace it and accept it. I'm no longer negotiating. Look at your core values. What are the values? What do you stand for? What is important for you? That's the foundation of who you are. And practice assertiveness. I know I can be another hour talking about that, But being assertive is the ability to say what you think and feel without being disrespectful and without trying to win. It's about us. It's not just about me. Thank you.
I think I'm good. I think you can turn that off, though. Thank you. Daniela brought this quote to my attention, and I really want us to take it to heart. So when we avoid difficult conversations, we trade short-term discomfort for long-term dysfunction. So there's a virtual component to this, and I think one of the people watching this right now is my aunt. And I am not proud to say that about 2 years ago, she was trying to have a difficult conversation with me. And granted, I was pregnant and hormonal, but I think I hung up on her 3 times, maybe more. And it continued to be a dysfunctional relationship for months. And I don't know, by a show of hands, I don't know if it's just me, but I'm hoping, not hoping, right? I hope it would just be me, but I know that it's not. So by a show of hands, who here has avoided a difficult conversation in the past? Right? We're all guilty of it. What I really appreciated about your sharing and your story, Daniela, is that you, at a very young age, began doing the work to lead yourself out of dysfunction and into something that was healthy. And so that means that we have to confront those pieces inside of ourselves, some of those truths that aren't serving us, and dismantle that. And this idea of communication, not only with others, but our internal dialogue, our internal conversation. And it's in doing this work of reflection and taking ownership of our own authentic power that's essential when we want to begin to have difficult conversations. For my portion of this workshop, we're going to talk about internal activism. And internal activism, from my perspective as a coach who specializes in emotional intelligence, is really summarized in emotional self-awareness. So emotional self-awareness is knowing, first and foremost, what you're feeling. So being able to name it. And then knowing why you're feeling that way. And then figuring out how those feelings are either helping or hindering what it is you're trying to accomplish professionally or personally. And again, in this context of having a difficult conversation. So I also just want to throw out this idea that you are the expert when it comes to your own life. As a coach, I'm a thinking partner and a recovering problem solver. So I think wanting to solve other people's problems got me into the profession, and I very quickly learned that that's not my job. My job is really to take what it is that you're sharing with me, you're giving me, and it's really highlighted in this image, right? So that muddled thinking, perhaps that saboteur conversation, and just seeing that as what it is information, right? And that the rain to me represents awareness. So I'm taking what my client is giving me, I'm containing it, and then I'm giving it back to them in a way that there can be growth. So taking what feels muddled, what feels hard, capturing that and turning it into something that can create something really beautiful and growth. But it's all coming from you. It's all your awareness that can serve you and bring you to a different place. And building off of what Daniela said, with this cognitive behavioral therapy model, therapy, I think it embodies all of this, but especially situational awareness, thoughts, and then emotional intelligence really falls into this third category. And then what's the behavior as a result of that? And the nice thing about emotional intelligence is that it can change over time and be developed in targeted areas. And emotional intelligence is also kind of a new lexicon, I guess. People are really a lot more familiar with IQ, and IQ is stagnant around the age of 19, right? And there are lots of arguments about, well, situationally, where did you go to school, who are your parents, what's the DNA? And so what I like about emotional intelligence is that it's really free of that, and it's something that increases with time and intention. And so my work, again, is so focused on what can we do to increase your emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is encapsulated in 15 subscales across 5 categories of functioning. And these are really the building blocks of things like healthy communication and something you alluded to, resilience and problem solving. And it's pretty cool because all of that can be mapped both theoretically and empirically to job satisfaction, academic performance, productivity, and other measures of success. So I love that it is really rooted in science and is measurable. And a little bit more about the why. Why are we invested in emotional intelligence? And here you go. You can earn more money, right? And top performers have higher EI, emotional intelligence, and also better job prospects. So that's one reason to lean into and get curious about working on your own emotional intelligence. So for today, circling back to this definition of emotional awareness and digging into it a little bit. So I want to help increase everybody's emotional self-awareness today. And you did a beautiful job, again, with openly discussing your challenges and anxiety. And I think in sharing our stories, it invites other people to do the same and see the potential for change and seeing how we can amplify our strengths and also really tackle the challenges that are in front of us. So, but with emotional self-awareness, if you'll remember, that began with the question of what? What are you feeling? And the work of Mark Brackett, I think, is so important and vital to our community as a whole. His focus has really been with children, and I'm so grateful for that, right? So when we create emotionally self-aware children, they're gonna be emotionally aware and responsible adults. But I think a lot of us didn't get this core training to identify our emotions and label them. So when someone asks you the question, what are you feeling? How are you feeling today? What's a standard response that you give? Right? Fine, good, I'm okay, or things are tough, right? Again, we stay pretty surface. And so I think we even stay surface in our personal reflection. So what becomes possible when we start to have more language and more ways to describe what we're feeling? And I think that then leads to curiosity and deeper reflection. I think that also a lot of us try to avoid this red zone, right? So livid, I mean, what a great word. Shocked, stunned, frightened, enraged, furious, right? That's stuff that we really want to move out of. But today, what I want to do is say to you all, take a risk with me. Let's sweat a little bit, get uncomfortable, but see what these feelings, again, going back to that question, what am I feeling? What these challenging red zone feelings have to teach us. Does that make sense so far? Yeah. And to start to kind of see our emotions as like an opportunity to go on this journey that's really exciting, right? And really personal, but can also become communal when you share and invite other people to authentically know where you are and what you're facing in your life. So I'm going to take you all through an EI exercise to, again, increase your emotional self-awareness. Out of curiosity, who here has taken a regular hot yoga class? Right, okay. So for those who haven't, the room is usually set at about 106 degrees. It's very humid, and you're going to be in this room for an hour. And you're not just sitting, right? That would be uncomfortable enough. You're actually going to hold poses that challenge your body and I think your mental stability as well. And you've paid to be in this class, right? That's the real kicker. And so there are lots of things in life where in the moment it feels really good. Sometimes when we overindulge and we're out with friends and yes, I'm going to have that that third glass of wine, or I'm going to have that other piece of cake, right? And that doesn't feel so good later. And then there's situations that feel good in the moment and good afterward, right? When we hang out with our kids, when you and I have been preparing for this, good in the moment, good afterward. And then there are those situations that really stink in the moment, like hot yoga, right? Like time in the sauna, like doing that extra long run because you're preparing to run a half marathon. So there are things that are really challenging in the moment, but the outcome and the benefit is huge. It far outweighs whatever pain there was before. And the same is true of difficult conversations. And so I want you to move into a place where you can stretch yourself, right? And have a deeper awareness and a new relationship with discomfort. And that discomfort being in the realm of your emotions, those red zones that we just looked at. Because emotional agility and physical agility both really create a healthier being. And I thought that would be a plug for the juicery, right? Healthy being. And out of that, you create, I mean, I'm so not an expert in this area. I just kind of nerd out because I think it's so cool about neural pathways. But that's really how we create new neural pathways, is by taking risk and doing things differently. So I want to invite you guys to do something differently with me, and kind of in the same tradition that you would in the yoga studio, to sweat a little bit, to be uncomfortable, to hold a pose even when you feel distracted or wobbly. So for now, I'm going to ask that everyone clear their lap with the exception of your notebook and a pen. But when it comes to your phone, your messages, they will all be there, again, at the end of this 10-minute exercise. And we are going to do some hot yoga for the brain. And just like in a yoga class, you don't necessarily want to get up and leave in the middle of a yoga class. So I do want to give everyone permission and no judgment. If this doesn't feel like it's for you, I would just say circle back in 10 minutes and we'll be done. But for the sake of the practice, the yoga practice of the person next to you, to just be respectful and to be in this space in this time, and give yourself the luxury of time, because it's so often that we just speed to the next thing versus being in the moment. So do I have everyone's buy-in to do 10 minutes of hot yoga for the brain? Okay, excellent, thank you. So I invite you to take a deep breath, okay? Centering yourself in the present moment. I invite you to also close your eyes. And as you step into the imaginary yoga studio, you can feel the heat. You can sense the perspiration building on the surface of your skin. It is hot. It's quite unpleasant, but you know that there's something good at the end of this class. You're going to slowly roll out your yoga mat. Deep breath in. You are now going to take your first pose. And in your mind's eye, that could be downward dog, tree pose, or simply laying flat on your back in Shavasana. And now we begin hot yoga for the brain. I ask you to bring to mind a current challenge, maybe a feeling in that red zone, focusing on something difficult that is present in your life right now. This could be a physical pain, a necessary conversation, a worry, a regret, perhaps some unresolved emotional or interpersonal issue which still has resonance in this moment. Find your focal point. Tune into the physical sensations in the body where this problem is most strongly felt. This could be an actual pain or discomfort, or it could be a place where you're tensing in your shoulders, scrunching your brow, clenching your teeth, where there's a felt sense of the emotion being experienced. Hold the pose. Be present to the sensation. Breathe into this felt sense of discomfort on the in-breath and out from this area on the out-breath. And continue to do so for the next minute. In the yoga studio, this is a time when your leg might begin to tremble. You wonder, why am I here? When is this class over? But instead, hold the pose. Stay with the emotion. Without trying to make the unpleasant experience go away, bring a sense of acceptance, curiosity, and befriending to what is there. You can ask yourself, what is this? Let's see what is here. Soften and open up around the difficulty, giving it space and allowing it to reveal itself. Hold this in your awareness for the next minute. Remember, you're not trying to make this feeling go away, even if you recognize that a part of you wants it to. Come in close to it with your awareness, exploring its textures, patterns, and edges. Allow yourself to feel it just as it is. Allow it to express itself. In the same way that you hold a pose, stay with this as long as possible. Gradually broaden your awareness around this difficulty. Recognize that there is more to your current experience in this moment. What does this feeling want you to know? And what do you need to learn? What becomes possible when you simply allow pain and discomfort to be present and trust that it exists to teach you? Now use your breath or other body sensation to anchor yourself to the present moment. Then shift your weight, shift your awareness to another aspect of this emotion. Transition into a new pose, if you will. Make space for a new perspective. Now bring your attention back to the breath, bringing life to your fingers and hands. Deep inhale, in, and relaxing on your exhale. Another deep breath, remembering what you need to remember. What becomes possible when we begin to trust that the discomfort won't last, that you don't need to work hard at pushing it away or eliminating it, since it's there to teach us, and it will eventually pass on its own. Now I invite you to come fully back to the present, knowing that you can choose to explore your emotions in challenging situations like this at any time. But I do want to ask that we'll maintain silence for just a few minutes, and with pen and paper, take notes about your experience. Thank you very much for being willing to move into a place of discomfort. It wasn't quite as hot in here, at least not on the temperature setting, right? But hopefully this experience allowed you to tap into some of that deeper knowing, right? The what am I feeling? Why am I feeling this way? And how is this impacting me? And with a group, this is a little bit challenging, but the power really is in the reflections. That's why I wanted you all to take the time to write down your own insights. But it's really in doing the work between coach and client to go deeper into a debrief, to take what came to the surface and see what else is there. So I was really excited. My friend Chelsea texted me saying she was going to be at this event. She's never done this exercise before, so it was really just a trust thing. She agreed to do a mini coaching session with me, a debrief, and hopefully you all will get value out of that as well, to kind of take some of the questions that I'm asking Chelsea and also in her sharing. Perhaps you'll hear your own story and see what else is there. So with that in mind, I'm going to hand Chelsea this mic. Oh, you've got one. Fantastic. This is not the first rodeo for our friend Patrick, who's running Mike and all the other stuff for us. So thank you, Patrick. So Chelsea, thank you for being willing to do this. I really appreciate it. What was the experience like for you moving into that place of discomfort? Was that challenging? Was that easy? Tell me kind of what that felt like.
So similar to the thing I ended up focusing on, I kind of started in the same place where a million things rushed into my head of like, oh, should I focus on this thing or this discomfort, this physical thing, emotional? And then ultimately, inspired by a conversation we had earlier, the feeling of feeling spread thin and pulled in so many directions, professionally, personally, spiritually, and sitting with that.
Yeah. So part of what I hear you saying, and this is probably true for many of you, initially it's kind of challenging to land in that place. There's some resistance. And what we'll see is we have conditioned responses. So what I'm hearing for you, Chelsea, and tell me if this is accurate or not, but that you have this tendency to hop around, right? Should I do this? Should I do that? And then that then manifested in this awareness of, I am doing so much that I feel spread thin. Mm-hmm. Is that accurate? Okay. So when you stayed with that truth and that awareness of feeling spread thin, how did that manifest itself physically in your body?
I would say it was mostly, rather than physical, it was mostly trying to actually leave my body a little bit and kind of get out of that and really, I guess, surrender to that practice of the hot yoga for the mind. And I wasn't really feeling my body at all. So it was definitely more of the mind. I mean, conscious of my breathing, but no real physical sensations.
I'm super curious. What happened within that surrender? What shifted for you? And that's beautiful to share, right? That you were able to go to this place of surrender and just being with what you were feeling.
I suppose I just started exploring the avenues of what was it about feeling spread thin, or so many things that I was taking on. And I think for me, it's not necessarily feeling overwhelmed by it, but feeling like I'm not able to give 100% to any of the things because I'm genuinely excited about all the things that I am taking on, but then inherently holding back or only, limited in my capacity to fully invest in each of those things.
So I hear you saying, like, there's just so much. I just imagine, like, this buffet table, and there's so many good choices. It's like, how do I pick one? And so when you, is that an accurate kind of visual description of all of the things that are available and that you're weighing out?
Yes.
I see you shaking your head, yes, okay. And so knowing that, right, and I hear also coming from this place of excitement and anticipation, perhaps, knowing that there's so much there and being present to that truth and that fact, what came next for you?
Kind of thinking of how it feels slightly conflicting to some of the core values that I hold. I've always kind of prided myself in my ability to say no, but then was realizing that that doesn't necessarily align with this feeling of feeling spread thin.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't have scripted that better. You just wove in a core value. Thank you, Chelsea, for doing that. Okay, so knowing that that's a core value of you, what do you want to do with this new information that you have, this conflicting piece of your core value and kind of how your life is being run right now, which sounds like it's very much with like a motor that never turns off. So how do you reconcile those two things?
Well, something I've been kind of sitting with anyway is giving myself more time with myself. And I think in doing that, I'll be able to prioritize the things that I do want to focus on. That feels more difficult to do professionally when there's so many, things on the plate. But I think it would at least help with balance as far as the other, spiritual and personal relationships and emotional work that I want to do.
Yeah. So again, hopefully her sharing resonates with you all, but she found her own answer within sitting with something that maybe she would avoid looking at. And so that's the power of being with our feelings and allowing them to inform us about our next steps, the choices that we want to make. So I could have offered some of the same advice, but it's not going to resonate in the same way. And going back to that idea that you are the expert in your own life, and what becomes possible when you slow down, you create space to feel what you're feeling, understand why you're feeling that way, and then knowing how those feelings are impacting the choices that we made. So it's a pretty simple cycle and thought process, but a really powerful one that moves you into a place of greater emotional self-awareness and lifting that baseline of emotional intelligence. And really, emotional intelligence does not exist within a silo. Like it's interpersonal, it's relational, I often talk about these different skills that we have in emotional intelligence, whether it's the assertiveness that you talked about, or problem solving, or what's another great example? I'm just thinking like leading with integrity, right? So all of those things, if we were to imagine them as a three-legged chair, we want to have balance. And so that was part of the invitation and desire that I had for you all in doing this mini coaching session and doing some hot yoga for the brain. So thank you, Chelsea. So here is, we're coming to the end of our presentation, and really what does it look like to have brought together this idea of authentic power, doing this reflective inner work and inner activism, which is taking the time to take that self-knowledge and do something different with it. And that's when we move into a space of transformation. So it be personal transformation around career choices, what's on your plate, or addressing a difficult situation or conversation. Would you like to add anything else?
Okay, well, yes, so that was like the main core, the work that we wanted to get done to answer the main question, like how to deal with difficult conversations. Do your inner work, find your authentic power, find that internal activist that lives inside yourself, and then you can face any difficult situations. And transformation, that's a very important word.
And again, thematically, we keep doing things differently, right? So introductions differently, and we also wanted to do our conclusion a little bit differently. And this is where our buddy Lizzo, did I skip? Are we supposed to do, is Lizzo next or is our Q&A next?
No, but I think that...
I think we're a little behind schedule for Q&A, so let's tap into Lizzo.
Let's tap into some Lizzo. So I was going to say Q&A was going to be different because we wanted to throw questions out to you all. But if you have questions that you want to ask us later, we're definitely available. But just I want to plant these seeds. So I want to know, and you can do this journaling later, what do you need in order to tap into your authentic power? Okay, so that's one question. What becomes possible when you can leverage greater emotional awareness? Is the second question in this flipped script of a Q&A. And then also, what is your biggest takeaway from today? And there really is value in taking the time to write these things down and not just have it live in your head, but live on paper. So again, with that in mind, Lizzo has some words of wisdom.